We are back with our final episode of the site report for season 1. Thank you to those who have joined us these past few months as we've given you an inside look at the employees who make our company so great. We hope you've learned a lot about the people at Keller, the great projects we work on, and the lasting friendships that helps our company thrive. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation as we have two golf legends in our presence. I mean, how lucky are we? Brent and Dan, thank you both for closing out season 1 with me. I'm really excited to dive into your backgrounds and just really kind of explore what your career has looked like before coming to Keller and then working at Keller. Dan, I do want to start with you. I have a hard-hitting question to start things off. I want to know how you got the name Dano. I feel like everybody calls you this. I don't even know if I know the real story. I'm hoping it's something funny, creative, but how did you get that name?
I have no idea. If anybody's old enough to remember, there was a Hawaii Five-0 show that they would always say, "Book 'em Dano," because there was a guy named Dano.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing that's where it came from. I had a nickname before that from Jimmy the Brick. That was Bones because I was so skinny. So I was pretty happy to change it to Dano from Bones.
So we'll start with you too. I do want to know what your kind of life looked like before coming to Keller. What did you do? Did you always know that you wanted to work in the geotechnical world? Did you have a different background or a different career in mind? So what did that look like for you?
I didn't actually want to or even know about the geotechnical world. I
Mhm.
started working for Jimmy the Brick, who was a mason contractor when I was 14 years old through
Wow.
his son was a hockey buddy of mine. And I thought, man, this is not what I want to do. It's hard work. And so then I, went through high school working for him and went to college and wanted to study automotive engineering because I'm a little
Mhm.
bit of a gearhead. And that led me to from going to Western Michigan to coming back to Chicago and going to school. And I thought that that automotive engineering wasn't that lucrative. It wouldn't be that fun because I was making
Mhm.
more money when I was working in construction and having more fun with people. So I moved back into the construction space and started off working for a GC as a field engineer.
Mhm.
And from like 1986 until it was actually 84, 85 till 96. And I met a guy during that time named Steve Shear. He ran the office and I ran the field on
Mhm.
some high profile projects. And in 1990, Steve left the general contracting business and went and started a foundation business with another guy and had been talking to me from 1990 to 96 about coming over as an operations guy.
Mhm.
And Steve and I were just really good friends and on and off the ice. So it took about three different hockey games down in Chicago to talk me into coming into the foundation business.
Nice.
And that's where I came. That's where I got to in 1996 with Steve. He was doing the office and I was doing the field.
And then what did you start out as when you first came to Keller? What was your role?
I was operations manager. When I
Okay.
came to Keller, we were bought by, we were a small, we used to get made fun of because we were called TCDI, the concrete doctor, it stood for. And people made fun of that, but we'd made money. We didn't care about being made fun of. We kind of
Yeah,
did.
they're not laughing when that happens.
It's everybody's, yeah, all this laughing leads to crying, but it didn't lead to crying actually. Um, we laughed about it with them, and then we were acquired by Hayward Baker in 2000. It was Bob Rubright and George Grisham that came out to Chicago and said, "Hey, we can, we'd like to have you guys join us." And I started as ops manager from then, and Steve started as he was running the office in Chicago, and that's where it started.
And then Brent, what about you? Can you talk a little bit about that and then how you eventually ended up at Keller?
Yeah, so not that dissimilar to Dano. Through middle school and high school, I roofed houses.
Mhm.
And, so I quickly also realized that was not a lifelong thing I wanted to do.
Sure.
Hard work, long hours,
Mhm.
but fun. That was the part I did enjoy. It was fun.
Mhm.
So I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to become a civil engineer. But at that time, I kind of wanted to be a structural engineer. Thankfully, via Purdue, I was able to do some internships, some co-ops with a structural engineer. I did that for about 3 semesters, and I realized that that was just not the world I wanted to live in. For me, it was like Groundhog Day. I was coming in every day, having the same conversations with the same people at the same water cooler, and it just seemed very mundane to me.
Sure.
And
Sure.
at that point, I was my college roommate had been working for Walsh Construction as an intern. He was heading to Texas that summer to work, and we talked to his respective boss, and we both ended up in Dallas that summer. And from then on, it was very clear to me that was my path forward. Interned for 2 summers with Walsh in various places, and then upon graduation, I moved to Chicago with my then girlfriend, who became my wife, and went to work for Walsh in the heavy civil construction side. So roads, bridges. I worked at the airport for 3 years. But similar to Dano, it was in the field. You know, we were thrown out there to work with the crews, whether that be actually helping do some of the work or whether that just be helping direct and understand what's happening and some of the mundane tasks as well. But more importantly, it was just being with them.
Sure.
So I did that for about 6 years, and then Dano and I had met via work, and I was ready to make a move, and ultimately came to Keller in 2007.
And I know you guys met through I know you said it kind of all started through golf. So I'd love to hear what that, interaction was like, how that went. I mean, Brent, did you get hired mainly for your golf game or for your work ethic? So talk a little bit about what that looked like.
I should
Well,
probably field that one.
yeah, I'll let Dano take that one.
He didn't get hired initially because of his golf game. We met at the Lincoln Oasis. We were doing some micropiles underneath a building that Walsh was retrofitting in 2005. I made the mistake 101 construction 101 mistake of not going down and looking at the site before we sent the crew down there to put the micropiles in. And the crew went down there and they said they're not ready. And I went down there and met Brent. I said, meet me down there. We met down there, and we had a nice conversation, which is probably the conversation that's been had since the start of time, about a GC getting your site ready for you. And I probably should have looked in the mirror on this one and said, I didn't go down there at first, so we lost a day. Of course, I blamed it on Brent. Why wouldn't I? He's the general contractor. And then we got the job done. And then a couple years later, in 2007, I did see Brent on the golf course at Ubstred, which is a very nice club in Chicago. And I saw him drive, and I said, we need him on our golf team because we didn't have a great game that day. We could have used a ringer. So I went over and talked to him and said that you should join our golf team.
Yeah,
Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, that's very similar. Yes. And what was funny about it was, so it was about 6 months from when he saw me at the golf course and we talked. And I happened to be on a work trip at the time in San Diego, and I get a call from a number I didn't know, and it was Steve Scher, who was his boss at the time. And Steve's voicemail to me said, "Hey, this is Steve Scher. We want you to join our golf team." So that's always been the running joke. Was the reason I came over here, was for my golf game. So whatever it takes, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't hurt to play some golf. I'll say that.
In retrospect, we probably should have asked him for a resume.
That was never asked, so that was okay.
Nope.
Hey, turned out all right. Looking back. I'm sure you have a ton of stories to share. I know you've done a lot of traveling together too, just being in the office, being in the field as well. I mean, does any story in particular stand out, or any projects that maybe you've worked on together that have really kind of resonated with you?
I'll start with that one. There's one job in particular that I will always remember, and unfortunately, it's because it was a really, really poor project for us. But Dan and I, in 2014, 13, 14, we had a project going on in Southern Illinois that was just going very poorly for various reasons. And, I think the reason I remember it, because Dano spent a lot of time at that point. Dano had moved on from the Midwest. He wasn't working directly with us, but, Dano spent a lot of time with myself and that project team, spent a lot of time on site trying to help us get the job done. And we did. And it was by far not a great one. But it could have been a lot worse. And, I remember it because we came together as a group, to make the best of a very, very poor situation. So it's one that we still unfortunately bring up now and then, because there's a lot of other memories that happen, let's say, off the project site that also make it memorable. But it's one I will always remember.
I think I bought a new truck on that project.
You did. That was one thing that happened off the project was Dano bought a new truck while he was down there on one visit.
Oh, there you
So
go.
silver lining. Silver lining.
That's true.
From the travel standpoint, there's a lot of stories that can be told from our travels together. But in 2000, roughly 16, 17, Dano and I and there was a couple people that went with us, Fritz Ackhorner, Daryl Easterling. We went on a visit to England to, at the time, one of our sister companies, Colcrete, was building a machine for us. So we were all going over to see it. And obviously in England, they drive on the other side of the road. Anybody that's ever been on a trip with Dano understands that Dano drives. That's not a question about who is going to drive. Dano drives. So we get to the rental car place and we spend easily an hour, a group of us, waiting for Dano to get this car. And he's so proud of himself because he comes out and gets this Land Rover. Really nice car. He's like, I got it for free. It was great. We're all kind of like, we just want to get the heck out of here. We've been on a plane for 8 hours. We want to get the heck out of here.
It was a nice car.
It was a very nice car. It was very scary. It was very scary with Dano driving on the wrong side of the road. He will tell you he didn't hit anything. I will say I closed my eyes. I'm not real sure.
Dan, is that true?
I hit nothing. That's the story I'm going with. But the other side of that is what they had given us originally was a big 15-passenger van, which was 1.34 times the size of a Range Rover, I calculated out.
Oof.
And I would have hit something had we had that big van. So that was my side of the story. It is my side of the story, still is.
I think the other passengers would tell you a different story as well.
Yeah, we should have brought them on to get their opinion on that. So Dan, I don't know if you have any stories with Brent that you want to share too, besides the Range Rover one, but I know we love hearing them.
There's probably not a lot of. I mean, he's shown up at golf, which was good through the years. He's still, so that's good. So we did make the right decision there. He has, the family part of it, there's been probably too much interaction with family due to long hours and being away from home. It could be too much. Some would say, if you asked our wives, they would say that I should probably put a ring on him, or vice versa. But no, there are a lot of there's just a lot that just goes to camaraderie, with the people that we have at Keller, and not just Brent and myself, but the people that worked with us. There's a lot of stories, and some of them can't be told on the air. A lot of them,
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's all right though.
We'll keep those for those one-off meetings, maybe with some people.
But I think it should be noted, as Dano, who loves to drive and through all these travels, that his favorite rental car is a minivan. Yeah,
Cadillac and minivans.
Cadillac and minivans. He, very, very little known fact that he is definitely a minivan person when it comes to rental cars.
I'll stipulate to that.
Oh, very interesting. Good to know. See, you learn something new every day. No, I do sort of want to switch gears a little bit. I know, both of you have sort of made your way up in Keller, from your initial days of joining, and I'm sure you've seen a lot about how the company has changed over time. I know we also talked a little bit about how a lot of people really aren't leaving the operations side of the business. So I just really love to hear about that, like what those early days looked like for you and why you think a lot of people are really just sticking with Keller versus, leaving, going to another company, finding another job.
I mean, I think from the operations side, I came in as a project manager in 2007, and then Dano got promoted in 2008, and I took his role here in Chicago and as the operations manager. And for me, coming from where I came from with a GC, where I was on a project for years at a time, the role that I took gave me the opportunity to be involved with a lot of different projects. A lot of different types of projects, a lot of different locations, seeing places, seeing things, meeting a lot of new people, spending time with various crews and superintendents. I think from the operations side, that's what makes the role what it is that you're able to touch a lot more projects, a lot more people, able to interact and make a difference in what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think that's what separates you want to say, separates the role. I think that's what makes it special in my eyes.
And as far as how Keller has changed since you first started, I mean, I know we were, Hayward Baker, now we're Keller. What has you think changed the most since those early days, maybe the past 5, 10 years? I mean, do you think the people are changing? Is the culture changing? Is the way we're doing stuff changing? Our technology, our safety culture, or have certain things kind of stayed the same during the past couple years?
I could take. I think the work has stayed the same. The work is always, there's not a whole lot different. There's a few forward. We never did rigid inclusions before. We never did a couple of the disciplines that we've done in the past, but most of the stuff, the big holes, the small diameter, the
Mhm.
work has stayed the same. But we were allowed to get more tools to do the work.
Mhm.
Scheduling tools. The equipment has gotten a lot more sophisticated. We've gotten better equipment and more of it, and more updated equipment.
Sure.
So that's changed. But a lot of the things that are still, like I call it, the construction 101 things that haven't changed, are things that we should never forget about. We need to still focus on.
Mhm.
Um, and Keller has allowed us, even learn things from the different from the group, the different divisions in Keller, that we feel pretty good about, in North America, that we've always shown up. And there are reasons that we've shown up, because we can always do better, but we try to keep that in mind, that we can
Mhm.
do better with whatever we're doing, to be more organized, more disciplined, and more accurate as far as quality control and stuff like that.
A lot has changed. I mean, obviously, within the last 5 years, we've had a lot of transition between one Keller happening, and immediately after one Keller happening, we had a pandemic, which shifted a lot of things. Not just with Keller, but across the construction landscape, and even further than that. Then you throw in, the last year post pandemic, a war happening in Europe that's killed supply chains. And so I think there's been a lot has changed when it comes to how we have to manage our business and manage our work, because whether it be, as things have progressed, and not just in construction, but some things have become more litigious. Margins are tight. Margins are tighter than they were 15 years ago when I started, and I'm sure Dana would say from 20, 25 years ago. I mean, it's we've got more competitors, but I think, to me, what stayed, I would say, very similar, is that when you visit the branches and you see the offices and meet the people, it's still the same. The people really care about their coworkers. We were talking, Lauren, about Dan and I's relationship, and how we spend a lot of time together. I mean, that's similar to how I feel about the branch offices, and how the same thing. They spend a lot of time together at
Mhm.
work, and they get to know each other's families, and they're going out and doing outings together. And I think that part has stayed the same. We really have a great camaraderie amongst the offices themselves, but even further than that. And I think that says a lot about Keller.
And I'm sure too that you've had, I know you guys have been in both the office and the field. You're probably meeting a ton of people along the way. I'm sure that you've had, maybe a couple mentors throughout your time at Keller so far. I'm sure you guys are mentors to each other. But I mean, does anybody really stand out as someone who's maybe guided you a little bit, or just kind of given you that push that you need to get to that next level, or just really, a good friend at work who you kind of confide in and rely on? I mean, who are those people to you?
There are, you always think of mentors as people that you worked for, or you've learned from, because they were your
Mhm.
boss, or they were your boss's boss, or something like that. And
Sure.
don't get me wrong, the past leaders of Keller have been my mentors. There's no doubt about it. The Bob Rubrights, the George Grishams, Eric, John Rubright, I've always looked up to them and learned from them. But I think that what really comes to mind to me is the guys that are, our superintendents, are in our field guys that we brought along. It feels really good about that. I feel really good about that. We have superintendents that have worked with us from TCDI days, which are,
Mhm.
1996, 90 to 2000, and that was, that's 20 some years ago. And I think of guys like Juan Garcia, who was a superintendent of ours. His family worked for us, and they've been around, and they've been, and never complained about anything. Just
Mhm.
went out there, traveled, was away from his family a lot, and never complained about a thing. Just were always, always there for us, and those are the guys that put the work into the work in the ground and allow us to do what we do, so I think there are guys in the field that there's I could name a bunch of them just off the cuff. It was interesting last week. I ran into a guy. We were at the equipment show, ConExpo in Las Vegas last week, and a guy said, "Dano," and I looked at him and I saw this guy, and his name is Cruz, and he's a carpenter foreman from Walsh, and I hadn't seen him since 1988. He said he recognized me from my walk, and I told my wife that, and she says, "You mean you're limp?" But anyway, and he came to my wedding back, and so those are the people that you meet out in the field, and those are really, and a lot of the guys that I worked for the general contracting company I worked for are with Walsh now. So these are relationships that we've had forever. And there are mentors that you have, or that I have, that are not even in our business, or they're in the GC business, that I've learned a lot from, as well as going all the way back to Jimmy the Brick. When I was 14. He was so mean and so rough on us that it was unbelievable. It couldn't happen in today's world. But it taught me the right way to do things, and if you do the right thing, you'll never go wrong.
I feel like I've heard that from a couple people. It's like those people who tend to be kind of hard on you and just really make you grind away. But those people, I feel like they have the most impact on your life sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was never hard on anybody. We know that.
No, Dana was a pussycat to get along with. You could ask some people in his office how many telephones he used to go through when we used to have desk phones, and he used to pound them about once a week because somebody messed something up. So
but it's usually my own fault.
Never.
We'll go with
never.
that.
It was never his fault, by the way. Never. Very similar to Dano. I had a superintendent that I worked with at Walsh when I first started there, and he would come to the job site because he was a traveling superintendent. He would come to the job site. He'd say, "Get in the truck." He would lay into you about what happened. Whether it was your fault or not didn't really matter. He would rip into you. You'd be done with it. You go have a beer, and it didn't happen again. It's not something that I would advocate for, because it's certainly not necessarily a good way to mentor or train people. But I think to the point of, it definitely taught me something. It taught me what I did wrong or right, but it also taught me that wasn't the way I wanted to lead people. But as far as the mentors, I had a PM at Walsh that was the first PM I had, Joe. He's still a friend to this day. I mean, I still talk to him. We still play golf together. I still go to his Christmas party. But he taught me a lot. It was tough love. I mean, it was 14-hour days, and that was the expectation. So it was tough. I don't regret it. I learned a lot. Going forward, obviously I started with Keller then in 2007, and people like Steve Scher, who hired me, and Dano had talked about previously. I learned a lot from him. The elephant in the room is I've worked with Dano directly for 16 years now. He's definitely a mentor. And, I think, and you go back to the superintendents, like Dana was saying, the Juan Garcias, the Bruce Mateers, Dave Borkowski's, that, they really shaped this company from 30, 40 years ago up to now. And it wasn't like they were teaching you how to manage the financial side of a project, but they were certainly teaching you how to manage the project on that site. And there's a lot to be said about that, and how to manage people. And there's a lot of those that are with Keller that are amazing mentors to the field and to our PMs.
And I know too, like you were just saying, so you guys have kind of known each other 16 years. How do you think that those early days look, I guess, of traveling? I mean, I know you still travel a good amount now, but how did you balance that at first with, your family and friends, being away from them for, maybe weeks at a time? I mean, was Keller supportive with that? Were they kind of trying to plan around your schedules to make sure that you were home with your family?
In the operations role, it's not, you're being told what you can do, where you should go, and what you can't do, stuff like that. It's not that way. If you're not a self-starter in this, and you're kind of not running your own schedule, it's not going to work for you. You have to be a self-starter when you're in operations. There's no doubt about it. You have to kind of figure out and be able to turn quickly. When something happens, you have to. I mean, when we've had issues and you jump in your truck and you head down 6 hours to a job site or 8 hours, whatever it is, when you have an issue that is our wives, or at least my wife, she understands that. She's grown up with it.
Mhm.
We both have twins, which is interesting. And if you ever know anybody that has twins or have twins, it's not easy. And I can tell you that if that my twins are 23 now. And it's rough when you're traveling and you have twins at home, unless you have a really good support group at home, which I did with my wife and my mother-in-law and family like that. So, if I didn't have that support, it wouldn't have worked for me. But it did. Keller's been always Keller's been allows you to balance your own personal and work life.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, I think Dan was right. We're fortunate from this standpoint is that we can dictate our travel schedule a little more than others can in the company. So we're very fortunate from that standpoint. The company has been nothing but supportive, and obviously, again, Dano has been the person I've worked with very directly for a while, and with kids and making sure we're getting home for birthdays. And sometimes you get caught up in the job and you start to sometimes forget that. It's good to have a reminder that, hey, this will be here tomorrow. You can this will be here tomorrow, but you got to take care of what's at home. And similar to Dano, I also have twins. Mine are only 11. But a great support staff, mother-in-laws to babysitters, and obviously my wife has been very, very understanding to what we do. She's in the business, and it's that helps tremendously. The company has been great. If you need to do something, you do it. You need to take care of something with your family, you do it.
And do you think that's one of the reasons that maybe people stay at Keller for so long is because they have this support from the company? They're, realizing, yes, your family is important. You need to be home for these sporting events, for these birthdays, for these big milestones. I mean, do you think that's one of the main reasons why people stay with us so long?
I would like to think so. I
Mhm.
do think that is not something that is necessarily a given at other places.
Mhm.
So I do think that it helps because again, from my own experience and from the time when my wife and I were having kids, and ultimately when they were younger, the company was extremely supportive in whatever we needed to do to make sure we were taking care of things at home. And I do think that's a huge value for the company and something we should celebrate with people that are coming on board.
Yeah, and I think there's like you can't understate things like the PM conference that we have when we have 500 people, and you almost know everybody there. That when we have those, and that's a pretty big family. And I'm not sure that there's a lot. I know some companies do it, but to the extent that Keller does it, and now with when they historically it was it started as a Hayward Baker PM conference, then we went to One Keller. All the companies we've always had different representatives from the different the business units that we had before One Keller, and it just made that family get bigger with One Keller. And the PM conferences are just, I think they're amazing. And the one part of that what made me think of that is that it's always over the weekend, and it was done for a couple of reasons, because we have there's work to do. We still have we have to be able to pay for the PM conference, but nobody really complained about being over the week gone for a weekend from their families to go to the PM conference, because that's a testament to that PM conference, I think.
So I want to leave our listeners with some advice or maybe one word that you would use to describe what your time has been like at Keller so far. So for everybody who's listening, I mean, how would you describe, is there one piece of advice that you would give to maybe people looking to break into the industry, or one word that you would use to describe what your time has felt like so far?
I guess from an advice standpoint, I would say is be open-minded. You're going to come into a business that, thankfully we have a variety of people. We have from A to Z when it comes to backgrounds and especially in the field. Whether you have a degree or you don't, it doesn't make you better or worse. Get to know the people because they have a lot to offer when it comes to their experiences. You can learn from it. From my standpoint, I think one of the biggest things that I took away as I've gone through this ride of construction is you can learn something from everybody.
Dan, what about you? Any advice? Any one word you'd use to describe your time?
Eventful would be
Mhm.
a good word, because it has been eventful. I would never have thought of the things that would happen back when I started with TCDI or Keller in 2000. I would never have thought of these things and thought of going to these places that I've been fortunate enough to go to meet these people that we work with. It's a cross section of America and a cross section of the world that we work with. It's fun. My mantra is, if you're not having fun, then you need to do something else. And having fun is doing things and getting, results. Hopefully good results. And we have had good results, and we've had fun doing them, but it's still business, and you have to understand that it's not a 9 to 5 job, and it's not behind a desk all day. For most people in our business, it's just not, and that's the attraction, I think.
Yeah, I think to Daniel's point, I think to me, for the one word, I think it's rewarding. I think that's the fun part of construction in general. But I'm a sports fan, so we did the Wrigley Field renovation back in about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. We started it, and we did a lot of work to support that building, and Case did the foundations for the bleachers, and you go out there and you see it, and you talk to your kids, and it's very rewarding to talk through that.
Yeah, it's a good point. You can actually show them, hey, we did that.
Sometimes my kids, I'll talk through some of it. They're just kind of like, Dad, we don't care. But, in my mind, they should care.
I know, obviously, both avid golfers, big golf fans. So, if you were given the chance to play at any course in the world with your dream foursome, who are you taking with you? I told you it was a tough one on the spot.
Ooh.
I like to win.
Oh boy, where's this going?
And I'm not that good anymore. I'm not as good as I once
started,
was.
Lauren.
Yeah, you didn't ask. You didn't. This wasn't on the sheet.
It
But
wasn't. I'm throwing a curveball.
I would probably go out to Pebble Beach,
Okay.
and I would bring Brent. However, I would bring a couple neighbors of mine who are PGA Tour professionals. I won't name them. One of them is actually on the Live Tour now, which is
Okay.
interesting in and of itself. But those two guys I would bring with Brent, and we would win, and we probably wouldn't be working again for Keller.
So love the confidence. So confident.
Oh, wow. I would probably go to St. Andrews in Scotland, and it would be, Dano and myself, and then two of my college roommates that I play golf with, one of them a fair bit in the summers, and another one that we tend to play a fair bit of golf when I'm able to see him. So I think it would be the four of us, and we also would win, but definitely in St. Andrews.
Oh,
Very
I
nice.
played with those two he's talking about, and I'm not sure we'd make it back.
It would be a long trip. Let's just say that.
Oh man. Well, we will leave it at that. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll happen one day. I mean, who knows? But I really enjoyed talking with both of you today, and thank you for making time to be on the podcast. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested to see, what you had to say, not only about Keller, but about your relationship and about your personal life as well. So I really appreciate it. Thank you both again.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren. You're the best.
And that about wraps it up for our show today. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you were able to learn a little bit more about the people who make our company so great. And as always, make sure to follow us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can always visit our website for more information at www.keller-na.com.